Good day everyone, my name is Os, and welcome back to the only series on my channel, the Reddit series, because I'm a Reddit YouTuber. Today we're going to be looking at some SupernovaRevenge, as I promised it in the last video, and never actually got to it because I got sick. And speaking of that, I'm still a little bit sick right now, so please bear with me, but I'm going to try to get some stories done, and maybe I'll be fine by the next time a video comes out. Enjoy. Mess with me? Okay. Mess with my dog? Oh boy, you're going to get messed up. Censorship. I originally posted this story on rSlash but was told by many people to upload it here. I have 3 dogs, Tiki, Scruffy, and Bailey, which my family has rescued from the streets and uncaring neighbors who couldn't care if the animal died. I also have 2 cats, Halo and Snowflake, both of which I adopted from the SPCA. I have Tourette's, ADD, and OCD, and the tics from my Tourette's made me a prime target for bullying. At that point in my life, I was the shy weird kid in the class that never spoke. I had no friends, and my companions were the only reason I woke up in the morning. One kid, we shall call Andy, loved to feel strong, so he picked on me. He beat me up, made me feel like trash, and I don't know what it's supposed to say here, and sicked other trash human beings on me, one of which later in my life I became friends with. In general, I'm very patient and very vengeful. One day, my mom brought one of my dogs, Tiki, to school so we could take her to the vet without having to drive back home because the closest vet was 50 kilometers away and Tiki needed a heart scan. My mom needed the toilet, so she left Tiki with me. Straight after she left, Andy and 2 of his goons show up. What's the spaz? Got any new toys for us to play with? Andy, please, she's very sick. I'm begging you, please leave her alone. Oh, but where's the fun in that? Andy proceeds to then pick Tiki up and toss her to his friends. Tiki had surgery and steel bars placed on a few of her bones, so it hurts her a lot if you don't pick her up properly. I can post the pictures of the x-rays. Because of the pain she is in, she snaps at Andrew and bites his hand. A piece of crap. Learn respect. Andy then proceeds to chuck Tiki a solid 5 meters where she hits the ground on the other side. I begin to scream and my mom starts to run from the bathroom after hearing my scream. Andy and his gang then run, laughing. My mom and I scoop up Tiki, who is wheezing and bleeding from her mouth, and take her to the vet while I tell my mom what happened on the way there. Tiki ended up passing away because of brain hemorrhaging from blunt trauma. Scruffy waited at the front door of my house for 2 days waiting for Tiki to come home. Just waiting. I tried to tell the staff what happened, but Andy was a popular kid and his parents were very close friends with the principal, so nothing was done to get justice. This whole ordeal caused me to become depressed, but in the end, I was left with a festering vessel of rage. No more quiet shy kid. No more weak boy. No more. I devised a plan. I went to the gym for every morning at 4:30 until 5:30, then I would get dressed and go to school. This boosted my self-confidence and I soon gained a few friends who are still my friends to this day. I became a teacher's pet. I made the whole school think I was a loyal goody two-shoes teacher's pet, all according to the plan. After 3 years, I was seen by the staff as the epitome of good and innocent student. No one would suspect me to harm anyone else. Andy had a scholarship to my school for playing sports and it was his passion in life. Would be a shame if someone were to end that. I told some people who I knew would take action what he did to my dog and how I knew some people would pay generously for the service. Next week, everyone is chatting in class. Oh my gosh, did you hear what happened to Andy? Yeah, I heard someone mugged him and bust up his leg. A comminuated leg bone was what was left. The assailant smashed Andy's leg with a hammer so many times that the bone broke into more than 5 pieces. The leg was unsalvageable and had to be amputated. Bye-bye scholarship and all his favorite things to do in life. No one suspected it was me, the outgoing kind teacher's pet who never held grudges? Yes, definitely not me. Andy, if you're reading this, I just have one thing to say. See you in the devil's lair. Ooh, yikes, I forgot that most of the things on here are probably illegal. And that's r/SupernovaRevenge. I forgot it wasn't ProRevenge or even Nuclear Revenge anymore. It just, ooh, these stories are wild. And strap in, we've got a couple more to read. Never mess with your IT guy, especially in the middle of an Iraqi desert. Backstory. In 2003, I was the Director of Information Technology and Communications on a project tasked with securing Saddam's major weapons storage sites throughout Iraq, performing a comprehensive inventory of said weapons, and then destroying what we'd found. I was based on one of the largest weapons storage sites in the country, so our mission there was monumental, blowing up 100 tons of weapons 6 days a week, SCUD missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, anti-shipping missiles, all the varieties of rockets, grenades, and mines heavy heavy to light was going to take years. In order to accomplish this, we had to first build base defenses and secure an area the size of a small country. Once that was complete, we built a major support base in the middle of the Iraqi desert from scratch and all the infrastructure to support it. We're talking housing, cafeteria with full commercial kitchen, office buildings, electrical, water, and sewage systems, toilet/shower trailers, recreational facilities, and an 8-bay full-service vehicle shop motor pool. And most importantly, in my opinion, IT and communication systems, radio, network infrastructure, services, VoIP phones, all connected to the outside world via satellite uplink. Story. All of these facilities housed bomb and explosive technicians, engineers, base support personnel, and as we had to provide our own security, private military contractors, or PMC. If you're not sure what PMCs are, think Blackwater/mercenaries, or look them up and you'll get the picture. Our PMCs were a mix of ex-US Special Forces, Army, Green Berets, Delta Force, Air Force Pararescue, and SEALs, British SAS, French Foreign Legion, and ex-South African/Rhodesian Special Forces, Rex, Sealer Scouts, and all of them were now mercenaries, and in reality, so were the rest of us to some degree. Most of the PMCs were dang good men, but when you assemble a motley crew of individuals from such disparate backgrounds, you're bound to have a couple of bad apples in the bunch. This story is about one of those bad apples, and for the purpose of this story, we'll call this bad apple Roid Rage, or RR. Roid Rage was one of the supervisory PMCs and oversaw the night watch from 2200 to 0600, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I usually started my day around 0700 or 7 a.m. and often worked until midnight, although those last few hours are generally spent surfing the internet and catching up with folks back in the US, as Iraq is 9 hours ahead. You're in the middle of an Iraqi desert, so there's not much else to do anyways, and other than the deadly 100-ton explosion at 1600, 4 p.m., the internet is pretty much your primary source of entertainment. Since I was often in the office late at night, I was regularly alone in the office with Roid Rage for a couple of hours. As I previously mentioned, I managed the IT and communications infrastructure for this project, and a vital component of that infrastructure were our telephones and voice over IP, or VoIP phone system. All of our sites used a satellite uplink to connect to a central VoIP server in Baghdad, which in turn connected us to the world. You could pick up any phone and dial a 5-digit extension to connect to any of our sites throughout Iraq, or call any international number in the world. It was a pretty sweet setup, but it was also ripe for abuse. We tried locking down international dialing with various service rules and PIN schemes, but due to the inherent latency in the satellite communications and the amount of bandwidth being consumed over a single satellite uplink at each site, we had trouble keeping those rules pushed to the phones on every desk. Ultimately, we had to scrap the restrictions as they were a real headache, and we went with an honor system. All international calls for businesses would be logged for review by site manager each month. Anyone wanting to make a personal international call had to use their personal AT&T calling card, which they could top up online or with a credit card. After spending a few nights alone in office with Roid Rage, I noticed a trend. Roid Rage would start a shift, check in with his men at their various positions as patrols on base, and then pick up the phone and talk in hushed tones for hours. It was a fairly large building and our desks were on opposite ends of the office, so I could never really make out what he was saying. But I could hear this constant murmur of him speaking to someone on the other end of the phone. It wasn't my business, however, so I largely ignored him. This went on for a couple of months. As our site manager had to return to the US for a family emergency, the phone logs went unreviewed during the time period. After a couple weeks, the site manager returned, and I was summoned to the conference room for a meeting with him and our senior US military and Department of Defense (DoD) advisors. I could sense the tension in the room as I sat down. The site manager slid a manila folder across the table to me. As I opened the folder to reveal pages upon pages of call logs, he said, "Freebase, we know you're usually in the office late at night, and somebody has making hundreds of international calls during that time and has racked up thousands of dollars in phone bills. I hate to say this, but you're our prime suspect at this moment, and with theft of this magnitude, we're gonna have no choice but to terminate you immediately and bar you from working on any DoD contracts in the future. Unless you have some evidence to the contrary, we're going to have to move forward with the termination and remove you from the country on the next supply convoy." I was shocked and sat in stunned silence for a couple of seconds, then it hit me. Those calls were made by rage. Someone hadn't been using their calling card. I immediately protested my innocence and told them that every night, rage would get on the phone at the start of his shift and would still be on the phone as I left around midnight. Then they summoned rage into the conference room and confronted him with the records. He begrudgingly admitted it was him and began to spin some BS story about being unable to top up his calling card because his credit cards weren't working and blah blah blah. All the while, he was staring at me with eyes of the fiercest degree of rage. We were short on senior PMCs at the time, so a call was made to Baghdad and a decision handed down that Rage's employer was to immediately settle the debt with the US government and Rage's salary would be withheld until he worked off the debt with his employer. Rage was also put on to final warning that any future impropriety whatsoever would be met with immediate termination and removal from Iraq, as well as being blacklisted from working with future DoD contracts. For an ex-US Special Forces operator turned mercenary like Rage, that would forever spell the end of the DoD contracting gravy train, and he didn't take this threat to his livelihood lightly. Now, any rational person would admit that they messed up, tighten up their game, and move on, but Rage isn't a rational person by a long shot, and the events that were about to unfold would highlight his irrational and sociopathic nature. After the daily demolition at 4 PM, I was especially dirty, so I hurried back to the base to beat the evening rush on the shower trailer so I could grab a hot shower before the limited supply of hot water ran out. Our water heaters took forever to heat. Upon entering the shower/toilet trailer, I noticed that I had the entire place to myself. I savored this rare moment of solitude, used the toilet in peace, disrobed, and stepped into a nice, much-needed hot shower. Just as I was working a nice lather of shampoo into my hair, I hear the door to the shower trailer open. Boots clop across the floor to my shower stall, and the shower curtain is ripped off its hanger by none other than a very pissed-off Rage. Seething with rage, he grabbed me by the throat and yanked my wet, naked body out of the shower and slammed me up against the opposite wall of the trailer, choking me all the while. I'm pretty sure this person is gay. Now I'm about 5'11 and a toned 175 pounds, but Rage stands at 6'4 tall, weighs about 240 pounds, and is a steroid-enhanced muscle-bound mass of a man. Rage's grip on my throat put an ever-increasing pressure on my windpipe, and in my oxygen-deprived state, I began to panic. I thrashed about, trying to loosen his grip, but in doing so, I expended the limited oxygen I had and felt myself growing weaker by the moment. Rage leaned close to my face and said, "You think you can rat me out and there wouldn't be any consequences? Let me tell you this, Iraq is the home of unsolved mysteries and bad stuff happens to people every day out here. You better watch your freaking back, because I'm gonna be coming from you from every angle at every freaking opportunity from this moment forward." Just as I felt myself about to black out, he threw me to the floor and gave me a solid kick to the stomach, followed by another to the kidneys, and walked out, leaving me cold, wet, and gasping for air. I pulled myself up onto a nearby bench and staggered back into the shower in shock. I pissed blood for 2 days after that beating. So much for a peaceful afternoon shower. I made my way to my quarters, sat on my bed, and thought about everything that had just taken place. My immediate thought was to report him to the powers that be, but given the circumstances and that he was always armed, I had to plan my next course of action carefully. RR is a steroid-influenced individual and a professional killer with his career on the line in the high-stress environment that is Iraq. My fear slowly turned into caution and then evolved into anger. Yes, I'd have to plan my next course of action and ultimate revenge very carefully. For the time being, I decided against reporting him and writing on any convoys he was on. I had been procrastinating setting up a private Wi-Fi network connection to my trailer, but I wasn't going to be caught dead spending any late nights alone in the office with Rage in the near future, so I got that set up that night. The next night, I left my trailer to use the bathroom, and as I passed the office on the way back to my room, I saw Rage sitting at his desk by the window on the phone. Why is this guy on the phone all the time, and who is he talking to? Time to investigate. The investigation. I don't want to get off in the weeds and the technical jargon, so I'll try to keep this as brief and simple as possible so you can comprehend my next course of action. All of our phones at our site were a voice-over IP. Phones connected to the local network, which was connected to our satellite uplink. Every VoIP phone has a unique MAC address, a fingerprint if you will, which identifies it on the network. I had the master list of all the devices and phones connected to the network, so I could easily identify the phone Roid Rage used every night. Network instruments make a nice little program called Observer, which allows you to monitor all traffic on the network. It even has a cool little feature when you can flag a phone's MAC address, fingerprint, and to tell it to automatically begin capturing traffic on that phone from the moment the phone makes a call until the end of the call. Once the call is complete, it dumps the entire phone call into an audio file, which you can then play back at your leisure. Pretty neat. Time to observe. The analysis. Over the next month, I amassed hours and hours of calls that Roid Rage made, and I finally found out who he was talking to. We already know that Roid Rage is a huge piece of crap. However, the conversations I listened to took it to another level of crappiness. I sat at my desk every day with my headphones in, pretending to be listening to music, but in reality I was digesting each and every call, taking notes, and marking timestamps of the good stuff. Here's what I found. Roid Rage is married and has 3 kids. Roid Rage also has a mistress in the US who is a stripper, and by the sounds of it, she's a world-class gold ticker. Roid Rage spoke to his wife and kids about twice a week on average, but always kept the conversations brief because he was busy running the show in a very dangerous Iraq. As soon as Roid Rage would hang up with his family, he'd immediately call his stripper mistress. Let's call her SM. Roid Rage made it a point to call and talk to stripper mistress for hours every night. However, a D-bag has to have priorities, right? Most of the conversations were pretty okay. Yep, we're gonna skip this entire section here because holy crap, there is a lot of crap. Alright, on to the next paragraph. I don't even know if I want to leave this up for you guys to read. I guess I'll decide later. Okay, from this point, I'm just going to say Roid Rage is RR. I've had to do so many extra takes just because I can't say that very easily. So, another memorable conversation involved RR calling his wife and telling her that he'd have to cut his next vacation and leave the US short because he was so critical to the operations in Iraq. They wouldn't be able to run the place without him. This conversation was followed by an immediate call to SM telling her, yeah, the old lady bought the story hook, line, and sinker. Yeah, I told you, she's dumb. Yeah, baby. I look forward to the tickets, and this time we're going to Paris. We're gonna do it big. While these conversations were certainly deplorable, other conversations with SM were much more dangerous in nature and severe violations of operational security. Given RR's foul nature, I can kind of understand why he felt it necessary to brag about operations, but man, when you're talking to a stripper in the US who has no idea about any of this Iraq okay, almost said that one, whoops. Make stuff up if you must, but don't actually discuss the specifics of our operations and movements to inflate your pathetic ego. Some of these calls went like this. Yeah, I'm the convoy commander tomorrow. Yup, large and in charge. I'm running a 20 vehicle convoy of flatbed trucks located with big SUD missiles from Karbala to Amara. I don't know how to read any of these. Tomorrow morning at 0900s. Or 9 AM, and all 40 guys on the convoy will report to me. These missiles are pretty volatile and sensitive, and we'd be a prime target for the bad guys, so I came up with a plan to cover everything with these huge canvas tents we stole off some towelhead okay, oh my gosh, this story. I mean, I guess swearing, but so we can disguise everything. Heck yeah, I'm smart, baby. This was just one of the many calls of this nature, and a growing frequency of these calls ultimately forced me to cut my investigation short and move to the next phase of my plan. Phase 1 action. I started studying RR's movements and which convoys he was on and where they would be going. If I was going to pull this off, I had to be pretty spot on with my timing. I edited the calls down to be the good stuff and burned 2 CDs for 2 different audiences. RR ran a weekly supply convoy to Baghdad, and one of those CDs needed to be shipped to the US within a week's time. The only way to make this happen was to drop off one of them to the DHL at Baghdad International Airport. They always stop by there on their way back to our site and to pick up beer and booze at the duty free, which was the only thing open in the airport terminal at that time. So I packaged one CD up and asked a buddy on the convoy to drop it off at the DHL for me and told him I'd pay him back when he returned. Once the convoy returned to our base, my buddy handed me the receipt and tracking information. Done. Phase 1 is complete. Now it's time for Phase 2. Phase 2 action. The following week, I packaged another CD up and asked the same buddy on the supply convoy to drop that off to the DoD country's director's office at the project headquarters. By this time, the first CD was out for delivery in the US, and the second CD would be delivered to Baghdad HQ in 4 hours. Perfect. Not to pat myself on the back, but the disaster that was about to unfold for RR was a product of patience, dedication, meticulous planning, and flawless execution. The convoy made its way back to Baghdad, and the second CD was delivered to headquarters. RR made the usual pass by the airport for the booze run and then returned later that night. Reaction. The following morning, the entire base awoke to an unusual sound, that unmistakable sound of whirring of helicopter blades. The only time we've ever heard a chopper land was for a medevac, or medical evacuation, which was for one of our local Iraqi ammo handlers who thought an empty weapons bunkers would be a good place to, Great, yeah, I don't know what to say. That didn't go over so well, and he ended up getting bitten by a viper in his groin area. Oh gosh. However, that's another story for another time. Oh my gosh. So this Black Hawk helicopter with the overhead Apache escorts lands, and these guys come out running asking for RR and the head of the PMC at our base. They unceremoniously roused RR out of bed along with a head of security and told them that they needed to leave immediately for Baghdad. With just the clothes on their back and their body armor, they were whisked away within minutes. As soon as they left, the camp manager approached me and said we needed to have a chat with Baghdad in the conference room. We made our way to the conference room and got on a call with our local DoD advisors and the DoD county director in Baghdad. He had listened to the CD and wanted to commend me for blowing the whistle on RR. He also scolded me a bit for not blowing the whistle sooner on our first violation of Operation Security I had heard, but I had told him the entire story and the brutal assault I endured with the hands of RR in the bathroom, and he softened his tone a bit. He concluded the call with assurances that RR would be dealt with swiftly and thanked me for my vigilance. Fallout. What follows was relayed to me by the head of security who traveled with RR on the helicopter to Baghdad. Upon the arrival at the helipad at headquarters, a US Army security detail had led the two individuals into DoD County Director's office, and RR was confronted with the evidence. The director sat there with the senior advisors present and played the entire CD in front of RR with his supervisor. It was a heated one-sided conversation, and RR got ripped up on one side and down the other. He was ordered to leave the country immediately and would be taken under escort to the US Air Force PAX terminal at the Baghdad International Airport upon conclusion of the meeting. He was also notified that he would no longer be eligible to work at DoD contracts in the future. The head of the PMC was also excoriated for allowing this behavior to happen on his watch and notified that their security company would now be under investigation for any other possible violations. If the investigation unearthed additional violations, they would be found in the breach of contract, which would be terminated upon transaction to the new PMC company. That company lasted another 7 months in Iraq. As RR left the meeting under escort, the director turned to him and said, "And tell your freaking wife to stop calling here and blowing up the phones. She's pissed off about something, but that's your freaking problem to deal with, and you need to call her when you get to the airport and tell her to knock that crap off." Moral of the story, don't mess with your IT guy. Postscript. RR, if you're reading this, I hope you're enjoying employing your talents for pennies guarding blood diamond mines for warlords in Africa, or whatever the heck you're stuck in these days. Holy crap, do not mess with IT people, much less IT people working in Iraq. They're already under a lot of stress, and now OP has to deal with this RR guy and just completely ruin the entire operation. Dude, he got off with a warning after being caught doing the exact same thing and just continued after and had the audacity to threaten it. I just don't know what to say. But I'm glad it all worked out in the end and the wife found out the truth and justice was served. And kudos to this guy for, actually working in Iraq. So thank you for your service if you are watching this by the slim chance you are. I truly do appreciate your service, so thank you for serving. And well, I think that's a good way to end off this video with such an amazing story. Holy crap, what a way to end off such a long episode. If you guys enjoyed this video as much as I did making it, make sure to leave a like down in the description. Is that how it's? I don't know. And subscribe if you want to see future videos like this. Hopefully I'm not as sick next time to read the story a little bit better, but life's life and I still wanted to make a video. Hopefully you never have to run into an IT guy who works in Iraq, because they are for sure to win every argument they are in. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.